Hello fellow Earthlings, it's Libs, and today it's time for a reading wrap-up. So I didn't do one of these in January, so this wrap-up will be for January and February. I didn't actually read nearly as many books as I would typically read in this time period. I was halfway through a reading vlog where I was reading BookTuber's favourite books from 2022, and one of the books, it was excellent. Spoiler, it got 5 stars, but it put me in a bit of a reading slump once I was finished with it, because it was a very emotional, difficult read, and so once I'd finished it, I didn't really feel like picking up anything else, and some of the other books I had for that video were also very emotionally draining, and I couldn't do it. So it put things into a bit of a mess, but I'm back on track now. So let's crack on into the video. So over the past 2 months, I have read 12 books. So I'm a little bit behind where I would like to be, but that's okay. I have plenty of short novels I can read to get back on track. I have read 3,611 pages. The moods I have been reading are typically emotional, reflective, mysterious, inspiring, and dark. They're usually a medium pace, and it's split 50-50 between books under 300 pages and books between 300 and 499 pages. And 75% of the books I've read are fiction. My most read genres are contemporary, mystery, literary, and crime. So I usually start these with the book I've rated the lowest and finish with the books I've rated the highest. My average rating at this point in the year is 4.04 stars, so that is pretty good. However, I do have one 2-star book to talk about, and this is one I just finished, and that is Heaven by Mieko Kawakami. This book, I've heard a lot about this author, a lot of good things, but this book, this is quite a short Japanese novel that's about bullying and the effects of bullying, and it's just, I mean, it gets dark. Like, the bullying that this one child in particular has to endure is just atrocious, and it's just kind of impossible that no adults are aware that this is happening. And it was very, I couldn't believe this scenario because it was just so violent and cruel and happening on the school grounds. It was just, I didn't like it. It was just, I did not enjoy this read. Then I have one 2.5 star, and that is Portrait of an Unknown Lady. If you've watched my last video, Reading Books Around the World, then you will know a bit about this one. This is by Maria Ganza. It is an Argentinian novel about this young woman trying to find someone her mentor used to know back in, I think, the 60s, who was very heavily involved with art forgeries. So it's like a little bit of a mystery, but it's not really. It was a book that really dragged, and it was never very exciting. It wasn't a very satisfying conclusion. It wasn't for me. And I have one 3-star book, and that is My Sister the Serial Killer, which is a novel from Nigeria that was very popular a couple of years ago. I read this for the same video. I liked it, but I never was really wrapped up in it. So we've got our main character who is getting worried because her little sister keeps killing her boyfriends, and she keeps saying it's in self-defense, but as far as the older sister can see, there's no evidence of that at all. And now the younger sister is dating the guy the older sister has kind of been in love with for quite a while. And it's just not very exciting. There are a couple of kind of twists, but they weren't shocking twists. They were twists I kind of saw coming, and it didn't really do all that much for me. I think if you're interested in reading this book, definitely give it a go, but I'm not quite sure why it got as much hype as it did. Then I have 3 4-star reads. So the first I'll talk about is Sad Cypress by Agatha Christie. This is a Poirot mystery. I decided this year, instead of doing the buzzword reading challenge, I thought that's just, I've got a very busy year. I don't have the energy to think too hard about trying to find books for all the prompts. So I decided to do the Agatha Christie reading challenge instead. So all the prompts are kind of themes or ways of being killed, or like I think this one was poison. So January was, I think, poison. February was, I think, bludgeoning. There's another month where it's betrayal. It's themed like that, but there's a book already chosen for that, and it's just, if you can't get that book or you've already read that book, you can change and do a different book. So for January it was Sad Cypress, which I think was poisoning. I liked this. I thought this was a very solid Christie novel. It's, I don't know what to tell you without saying it's about poisoning. There's a woman on trial for murder. It's believed that she poisoned somebody that she disliked who was in her house, and it's up to Poirot to figure out if she's actually the killer or if she was framed. And it's a very solid Christie. I also read Ink Dark Moon, love poems by Ono no Komachi and Izumi Shikibu, Women of the Ancient Court of Japan. So this is a poetry collection. The collection itself is very, very small. There's not much surviving poetry from these women, so a lot of the book is more just giving you the history and talking about the poetry and giving you context. I really like the poems. I think there was possibly a little bit too much context, but it was enjoyable. I had a good time with it. If you're interested in this kind of poetry, you'll probably have a good time with this book. And then my final 4-star was Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have gone back and forth about whether I wanted to read this book, but I think in January I was just really feeling some more light-hearted books after reading so many really intense emotional ones. I wanted something a bit lighter, and considering the Australian Open was on and it was the middle of summer, it just felt right. And you know, I quite enjoyed this. I was listening to the audio book when I was at the tennis. I didn't go to the Open, but went to one of the smaller tournaments beforehand, and it was just, yeah, a good time, good solid book. I mean, there's nothing particularly special about this one, and I agree with some of the criticism about it, but it's just, I don't know, it's just a light book. It's not her best by any stretch of the imagination, but I had a fun time with it. I have 2 4.5 stars. The first one is Ordeal by Innocence by Agatha Christie. This, I think, was for bludgeoning, which was February. I don't think this is the book that was chosen. I think it might have been a short story collection or a different standalone. I couldn't find it anywhere, so I went with Ordeal by Innocence because I've seen quite a few adaptations of this story, and none of the adaptations I've seen are particularly faithful to the book. So I really wanted to read the book to try and figure out what the actual situation is. And yeah, this is probably my favorite Christie, I'd say, so far. I haven't read a lot. I've read some, but I haven't read like the really big ones, mainly because I'm nervous. So this was kind of out of the ones that aren't as well known. And I think this one is still fairly well known, but it's not, you know, it's not Death on the Nile or Murder on the Orient Express or something like that. But this is a really, really solid one. If you want to start with Christie and you want to read a standalone, this is fantastic. It's about this house where the mother has been killed by one of the sons, and 2 years later or something, someone shows up to say that he's the alibi for the son and that the son couldn't possibly have killed the mother, and now they're trying to figure out who in this house could possibly have killed the mother instead. My final 4.5 star read was Bunny by Mona Awad. This is one of the books I read for my attempted reading BookTuber's favourite books video. This did not put me in a reading slump. This was great. I had a really fun time with it. It's a very strange novel. I don't really know how to explain it other than it's kind of a little bit horror, a little bit dark academia vibes. It's just a very interesting situation. I really like how things are hinted at the very beginning of the book, but you don't realise that they're being hinted at until you get towards the end, and then suddenly it all makes sense, which I really enjoyed. I find a lot of these kinds of books don't do the best job at tying everything together, but this did it really well. It was just a really fun time. It's very strange. I don't know what else to tell you. I think, yeah, there's a lot of hype around this book, and you're either going to really enjoy it or really dislike it. There doesn't seem to be any in between, and I can see why. But if you're interested, definitely give this book a shot. And then I have 4 5-star reads. The first is Thank You for Listening by Julia Whelan. You'll probably know her because she reads a lot of audiobooks that I very much enjoy. And after listening to a few of the books she's narrated, I decided I really wanted to listen to the book that she wrote and narrated. And this was just such a fun time. It's not the most groundbreaking romance in the world. I've discovered that when it comes to romance novels, I need something besides the romance to really draw me in. So with One Last Stop, it was the concept of, you know, someone being stuck on the train, stuck in time since the 70s and trying to figure it out how that had happened and all of that. With this, I think it was just the information about the audiobook industry, the relationship the main character has with her grandmother was just so beautiful. I really enjoyed it. I just think it was a really, really great, very sort of tongue-in-cheek book. It knew what it was doing. And I really enjoyed it. If you're a fan of Julia Whelan, you'll enjoy this book. I also read This Can't Be Happening by George Monbiot. Not sure how you pronounce that. This is the 4th book in the Penguin Green Ideas collection. This is my favourite book from the collection so far. He's just a really phenomenal writer, gives information without just pouring information and looking at why we don't always accept or understand the information we're being given. It's just, yeah, out of the collection so far, this is definitely my favourite of the books. I then read Know My Name by Chanel Miller, and this is a book that was phenomenal but put me in a reading slump because I just didn't have the energy to read anything else after this. You probably have heard of this book. I won't go too much into it. Definitely be careful if you want to read this book. It is very emotional and quite painful, but also quite hopeful. And it's just a phenomenal read. I'm not sure I could say I loved it, but I'm really glad I finally got around to reading this book. And the final book I've got to talk about is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is my first Emily Henry. It's the only one I think I was really interested in. I've heard you either like this book or her other books. No one seems to like all of them. Again, I think with romance I need something else to make me really interested, and I think the fact that the character is going on vacation in all these different places is what really drew me to this book. And I enjoyed it. I thought the romance was sweet. Again, nothing too remarkable, but it was just very cute. I really liked reading about them traveling to different places, and it was just a sweet, fun little read. So that is it for this reading wrap up. Let me know what you've been reading down below, and I will see you next time. Bye.